Welcome to another and hopefully incredible episode of Connecting Conversations with me, Carla, your host, and my fearless business partner, Evelkah.
If I do say so myself.
Why can't we just behave on these things?
It's me.
Wow. Let's just take it back a notch.
I'm sorry. I'm a bit on a high.
Which is great energy, I think, for hopefully this next conversation.
This conversation is a very interesting one, and I think from my personal experiences, and I'm really keen to hear yours as well, because I don't think we've actually touched on this even in our personal conversations outside of work.
Are you going to be outing me somehow in this conversation? Okay, great.
Sorry. Not sorry. But I think we in the series of transitions, we talked to a number of people around what that meant. We even talked to each other not long ago as to what transitions means to us. And we've had people come on and talk about their career journeys and, life and finding purpose and all of that stuff. But I just wanted to kind of take a step back and really look at transitions as a way of discovery. New discoveries. So I think that's kind of the angle that I'm now starting to broaden my horizon. When we think of transitions, we think of change, but it's also a space and a time where we discover something new about ourselves internally, about our environments externally. And so I know around 2 years ago now,
Heading for 3.
Heading towards 3.
Like 3 years and a month.
Oh, wow. But if anyone doesn't know already, Carla is a married woman.
Yes, I am.
She got the ring. But I think when we think about marriage, we think about relationships and all of that lovely stuff. But what does it mean to then transition from a single woman to then being a married woman? Because we hear all time and time again, marriage is hard and all of that. Okay, we don't want to talk about that stuff. But I want to talk about your journey as a person, as a woman, entering that new phase of your life. Like, what things did you discover about who you are? And was that a difficult thing for you to navigate in terms of, was there anything that you were shocked about yourself? Or was there anything beautiful that you were opening up yourself to as a person, as an individual entering into a partnership?
I'm so glad that you raised that, because especially I think in a culture like flooded by impressions from social media in general, Disney did us a solid with giving us the wrong ideas. And in terms,
waiting for my Prince Charming applications open,
and how we navigate that process, I think we've been at a little bit of, as I see as a whole, in some ways for me personally.
Yeah.
It's kind of put us a little bit of disadvantage about really engaging with proper connection and figuring out kind of like relational tools of building healthy selves to engage with healthy communication, healthy relationships. Again, that was maybe just me, that I feel like, even though I got married quite late on in comparison to maybe others that started out a lot earlier. And I thought that actually, with enough life experience that I've kind of had, that maybe this should be an easier process. Like you said, people speak about when you get into marriage, or you take that big step into long-term partnership, that, it's really tough. And particularly marriage, because that's really like this is a sealed commitment for those that come from faith backgrounds. It's covenantal, which has got different implications, different sacred implications to it. It's not just contractual. I've agreed legally to bind my life to you, or connect my life with you, or, hooking your wagon to this kind of, it's more than that. And I come from the philosophy of the latter. So, but in saying that, also have been growing up in a very modern world. And how do I, as well as occupying spaces like career of my own, I've had my own journey, and I was single for a really, really long time. I was never really a serial dater. But in saying that, like, I still got to kind of like my marriage with, I would say, I felt there were so many tools that were missing from the box.
Interesting.
Really, really, really missing from the box. And there might be some things that come out in this conversation that might shock you, Evelkah, in our long time of knowing each other. But like, it's a real thing. And I think because I had a real strong establishment of sense of self in that sense, like I was pretty like, this is who I am, and really comfortable in my skin in a lot of ways. I'd had like such definite ideas, and I'd walked in them. Like I had done some incredible achievements that I'd always wanted to do and I felt whole in them. I'd never felt like, oh, like I'm half a person. That's not it. Did I long for the companionship of being married? For sure. Like I know that I wanted to be married since I was really young, but it didn't stop me from living. But in that space of time of like that self-development, that self-growth, figuring out career paths and having a fully fledged career, doing great things with the other parts of my life. So I'm a singer songwriter as well. I don't know if people know that, but they just know me as the CC founder. But I've had quite good platforms for that internationally. You've been in loads of different places. Our music is played on radio stations. So and I had a great group of friends, people that were like super awesome. But and you think you're going to get to this space like, I think I've got some good tools entering into this. And also I'd had these great friendship groups that those that had already moved on into like being married on their own, and they would never shy away from the challenges of what navigating a relationship like that was like. So I was like, you know what, I feel quite prepared until I got here. Until I got here. And I know we've said already this is not a relationships podcast, but that transition for me was like monumental in terms of shift, probably more so than any other transition. And I'm happy to kind of break that down. So like, for one thing, I spoke about this wide life that was uniquely on my own. And just to be very clear, my life is not diminished in any way, but a lot of those things that I did were so attached to my sense of identity.
Interesting.
And when you are, joining your life willfully to the life of someone else as well, and you have to start building together, you get this real big mirror showing you where all the flaws actually are. Big transition. And with my experience with marriage, and this might not be anybody else's, but like I had left my last career, and that was what we wanted to do. That's what we agreed to do, not because they told me like, you're not doing that anymore, but my job really made me super unhappy. In one of our other episodes, I talk about how like being in my last role, it was such a major withdrawal from so much of my life. Not only did it not pay well from a finance point of view and a financial freedom point of view, but intellectually, like my sense of well-being was just in the red all the time. And my ability to take care of myself, both health-wise and mentally, just wasn't really great. So we'd agreed and we were in a privileged position where we were just able to say, we'll rely on my husband's income, which was amazing. And like, for a chance, it was like, we've got into this agreement and saying like, we will basically take off the shelf everything else that you had to be able to do this job. Huge blessing. I can't be more thankful. But even in saying that transition of stepping away of the things that gave me financial independence, as kind of poor as it was, because it wasn't corporate salary, I'll tell you that now, was gone. And even though I was in a better place, not being in a position that I'm the one that generates that like wholeheartedly was a huge transition for me. And that then I found this is then connected to my sense of self-worth. What do I bring to the situation, like in partnership and in our understanding? And again, this probably falls into a philosophy that goes a lot more into a faith background, a Christian background, a biblical background. The role that we have an understanding with is just like, my husband is the head of the home, but not in a way like he's my domineering master. This is like, I take responsibility and carry the weight of you, whether or not you are working and contributing from a financial point of view. In a world that is trying to get Miss Independent Woman, and I come from a faith background, but like I said, I've been living in a modern world where I have, invested in myself academically over years, done all these other things on my own. To take a step back and allow someone to take care of me like that was a massive transition.
And was there anything that you found hard in that transition?
Yes, because I was thinking like, if I don't have the opportunity to exert those kind of behavior patterns that I had before that affirmed this is what my sense of identity and value is attached to, taking that away, even for good reasons, it made me really question, like, what is it that I have to offer? What is it that I bring to the table?
Do you feel like you were perhaps in a space of identity crisis?
I would say it was like a major adjustment, and having to go back down to base level or ground zero and really start reevaluating what's my identity based on. Because if your identity is based on work and you don't have that job anymore, this is why you see people fall apart, because they're so attached to their work is who I am. And someone who comes from a background like myself, that's actually not where we would be basing our sense of self-worth. You know, it's founded in something much bigger. And that's a conversation for another day. But like these things that are temporal, basically, like a career, a social standing, or a position that I've built up. If it's not there anymore or shifting because life shifts like that,
100%.
Where do you go, and what is that based on? And don't get to that place so far. Like if anything, hopefully this conversation brings someone just like a bit of a checkpoint, and like, I need to maybe evaluate that. Like, how much do I place my sense of worth and self-value in the things, the temporary things, than in something else that's more, because that's not going to be enough.
No.
The other areas that I would say, like, this whole transition took place is like, I changed my name. Legally, I've become someone else. That is like changing my name on all my documentation.
Was that long?
It actually wasn't too bad. We knew what was coming. So like one of the things you can do when you get married is that you can ask for multiple copies of your marriage license. Like, so they're no to read and everything like that. But it means I got to send out so many requests to get like major documentation change right away. And to be fair, because it was COVID, it was quite quiet. A lot. It's not like I was needing these for desperate moments. And because we'd chosen to taking a bit of a break with refiguring out what my next steps were with career and work, you know, that shifted. So I was just like, but I got it done quite quickly within a couple of months. It wasn't like terrible. Good. But still, the fact is I was always known this one way, and now my name means something else. And the irony was I had gone on like throughout my life saying I was going to double barrel my name. I was
but do you think that's because we live in a modern age, especially from a woman's perspective, where, like you said, Miss Independent? Because I'm at that phase where I'm like very adamant that I'm not going to change my name. like the Powell is staying. You come and join that Powell, but it's not leaving. But hearing your story that you were in the same mentality as me, and then
I changed my mind. Changed my mind. Yeah.
Change your name. Like, what was going on in your head? Like,
so this was a big discussion before we got married. And like it was, because it's like, I want to we'll double barrel on keeping my name. This is who I am. I was this before you came. And I came in with all that gusto. I really did. But I think, again, this is maybe something quite unique, and the way that needs to be dealt with, like, you have to take it case by case. So I think historically speaking, like you say, women in the modern world, like their understanding of when women were taking their husband's name, that was an ownership thing. If we go back in history, it's just like you become absorbed into what your husband was and family life, and that's all that you were. That was the only option that you have in your existence, of finding a way both you know, economically, socially, and just to be accepted in society. And for me growing up, it's just like, well, I'm of the modern era. Like, I appreciate and to be fair, I'm still I've always been more on the conservative side of living. It's not like I was looking for wild things, but my mindset was like, I was still going to make sure that my voice was heard and my individuality was still prevalent. And the kind of dialogue that happened between my husband and I was an interesting one, because he was like, I understand, but he's like, but nobody's asked you to lose yourself, because that's effectively what I was fearfully putting up as my precedent for why I think this should be this way. He's like, I'm not asking you to do that, but it's like, but when you become my wife, and as I said, our understanding and the philosophy that we subscribe to is that as the head of home, he carries responsibility of me financially, spiritually, and my well-being, whether or not I'm working, whether or not I come to the table with anything to give. Like, he comes from that school of thought, which is huge. I think nowadays we would love to see more like that. But we also, in a society, we've got lots of unhealth on both male and female sides about how that perception is treated, right? So a step back from that is like, I want you to have everything. So I did not come into this marriage with the same amount of assets that he did, or, you know, those kinds of stuff. And for him to say, the reason why I want you to have my name is because you have everything. So if you have my name, you have access to everything. And if you think about that, the power imbalance that I thought I was fighting was actually, he's probably more of a disadvantage. If you really think that through. Oh, sorry. If you really think that through, right? Yeah. And so I was just like, and that won me over. That was such a loving gesture. This wasn't about contract. This wasn't about, even like we spoke earlier about, like that covenantal promise, which is a lot to do with allyship, but in a sacred way. This was to do with a loving thing, like, you have everything when you have my name, and I want to gift you that. So I was like, I'll take the name.
If it's a name that I will take,
I'll take the name.
I'll take it.
But again, like, his mindset towards that is what makes this work. If I can't say that if someone else who did not have, I would say, and I'm really blessed to have a husband so healthy in this way, and kudos to his parents that have raised him like that, and he's seen that example his whole life. If you have someone that is not healthy in those areas, but like they're just given the titles of what those roles are supposed to be, I can't guarantee that that's the heart intention that comes behind how that gets expressed in the behavior that a couple may feel in a different dynamic.
I think it goes back to, what does that name mean so much to you? Like, is it such a bad thing? And I think he asks a really pivotal question, like, I'm not asking you to lose yourself. And funnily enough, our names are something that we hold very dear and close to our hearts. Like, that was a name our parents gave to us. It was a name that you grew up with. It was a name that when you're on the street and someone says it, you turn around, because that's you, that's your identity. And I think for me, my name, like, as much as I don't want my name to be the be all and end all, there is this kind of attachment that I have to my name. I'm just like, no. No, if this is the last thing I have, I want to keep it. But I think it's not our name, but more so it's like, you know, what are you going to gain from this? What are you going to learn from this experience? Sometimes in life, with anything, it's a give and take. You know, you have to give something in order to gain something more. And, you know, it goes back to when we were talking about generosity in terms of finance, and how that comes back to you. And I think, you know, you may have just changed your mind on whether I will.
But I was exactly similar mindset to yourself. Like, and you can see, as I gave you kind of a little bit of insight into my life before, you know, getting married, like, I was really comfortable, really secure in my sense of self. And I think the other thing that out of that same process, and I think that led on to the other area of how this was another area of change and transition, was that I have also shifted as a person. I've not lost myself, but I've also gained some other things. So within this new space that came with a changing of the name, changing of like a status, I'm not kind of like, a lot of those things that I did before and built was on my own. I now have someone who is next to me, literally as a teammate, who is probably so much better at getting me to the destinations of my aspirations and dreams than when I was doing this on my own. I'll give you an example. So my sister and I were in a band. We've been working on our album for 10 years. That's a long time. And that's various reasons. Like, I'd written those songs so long ago, like over 10 years ago, some of those songs are that old. But the important thing was just like, with life changes, like, she had gone and got married herself, had her own family, had career changes, band members had come and gone. And that came with, like, you know, different kind of relationship dynamic shifts. And those were hard too. But like, I was married to my husband within a year. We had not only launched that album, we'd had a marketing campaign, we'd had gigs in that time, and it sped up the thing. So like, what I'm saying is, in my new season, and again, this is probably down to you, I really can't strongly recommend, make sure that you're choosing someone who's going to be the life partner just for the nice feelings, is know that this is the person I always used to say, who am I supposed to build kingdoms with? And he really is that person, because outside of like romance, which is all lovely, is the fact that you actually see your life progressing in growth, and you see that happening. And there was no way that I know that my skills, they come to a limitation, they come to a restricted space. And being joined with someone that had the skills that I didn't have, all I've seen is like so much growth and propelling, one of which is the fact that we're sitting here today, the entrepreneurship of like, I've shifted career. And one of my dreams is to really occupy healthy bridge building space within culture engagement, in the workplace, within society, and being impactful that way. We have this platform because of that, because of someone that, like, a change of transition, a change of my life. And I wonder, like many women that go through, they come out of long-term relationships, or they enter into things like a marriage scenario. It's not just like, oh, marriage is difficult and it's a different season. Like, what if you were to break down the intricacies of how much changes in those transition moments, as a big step, like getting married to someone, and also maybe in that process you might have also moved like country or a spatial area, having to change communities that you used to regular. Those are huge transitions. Like, and we probably should talk about those more.
I totally agree. I don't think we talk about marriage as a concept and what we should do and what we shouldn't do, but we don't talk about the discovery in that space and the selfhood in that space. Because, for some people, marriage might be like, well, I'm not going to be my whole self. And for some people that might be scary, so they don't want to get married. They stay in positions where, they're comfortable, where they have control. But I do think there should be an understanding, and there should be more conversation as to why these transitions should be embraced, because they only, with the right people and in the right environment, shall I say,
that's such a big factor.
They can propel you to
100%.
growth and success. And I think you just have to be mindful, like you said, choosing the right life partner, or choosing the right career or environment you want to work in, or choosing the environment you want to live in. Those are all really, really important decisions as to, okay, this is going to be a change, but is this change going to, take me to the next step, to my destination? And I think sometimes we sit here and think about, okay, I just need to get there. But we forget we need to be in the moment and present, and we need to really take stock of what's happening now, and the journey that you're going through now, because we can think about the end destination, and that's all lovely. But if we don't think about the discovery that we have to do within ourselves internally, that destination you may never arrive. And I think it's so important we must treat transitions in me in a project. Like, what can I do? Like, what are the challenges? What are the gaps? What tools can I bring in to help me in this moment in time? Because it's the little steps, the small steps, that are going to lead to the bigger impact at the end of the day.
So you've basically had major hot seat for me in the last 20 minutes. Let's talk about
done.
I know that you and I come from very different kind of backgrounds and experiences. Like, you yourself have come through quite a long time relationship. What kind of discovery transitions have you encountered since coming through that process?
So for me, when I was at an event, just taking it a step back, I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, and one of the opening questions, great, was, when was a time in your life where you had a major change that has made you the person you are today? And it didn't take me very long to look back and see where that change, or when that change happened. And I'm very open around about this, but I was in a very, we're not going to make this about relationships, but I was in a long-term relationship with someone, and at the end of that relationship, I don't know, something shifted inside of me as a person internally, and I kind of had an epiphany about who I was in that relationship and who I am becoming. And it was quite sad to see that the person I was in the relationship wasn't authentic to the person I knew I could be and become. And so when that relationship ended, I felt like there was, I had a, it's so hard to explain, but it definitely felt like weight had been lifted off my shoulders. And this is not to say that the person I was with was horrible or anything. Like they're amazing, they're amazing in all ways possible. However, I think when we talk about environments, I think that was because I was in the wrong environment. It wasn't an environment that allowed me to grow. It wasn't an environment that allowed me to experience or be or experiment with who I am and who I was becoming. And I felt like I had to kind of stay in a place that felt comfortable enough to make sure that I wasn't going too ahead of them.
Okay.
So for me, it wasn't the person, but rather it was in the environment I was surrounded by at the time. And this wasn't just because of him, but also because I was connected to other people as a result. Like my mindset just shifted. I came out that relationship and it was like an awakening. I was just like, that was not Evelkah. And I had friends who, friends being friends, some of them won't tell you stuff after. They were just like, Evelkah, you weren't like, there was one friend, she knew me from uni, and she was just like, you had so much ambition, you had so much drive, and I almost felt like it was slowly dying.
Wow.
And I'm just like,
do you think though, because I hear this often, like, where were these friends when they should have said it at the time? But I think that the tough balance of that is like, would you honestly say that you would have been in a position to hear that
probably
counsel?
wouldn't.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't. And at the end of that relationship, it all became real. And that's when everything shifted, from career, from money. I lived on my own for the first time. Like, it was mad. And then, Cohesia Connect really became a big part of that transition and what we're doing. I opened myself up to new people and I started networking, and I did my first solo travel during that time of
rediscovery.
And I really, really found a new sense of freedom in that transitionary period. So that was my kind of shift in
what
all
would
of
you
this.
say would be like, if you could give just another young woman or another person facing a big step of transition, what piece of advice would you give them?
I would say just think about your environment.
Okay.
Just be visible, be conscious, because I think when we go in there with rose tinted glasses, that's when everything starts to shift our understanding and our take on things. And I think we just really need to see things for what they are, because even though I was in that relationship, there were things that came up that I should have seen as blockers that wouldn't have allowed me to be where I am today, if I was still in that relationship. And I think I was just blinded by certain things. So I think just be visible, take stock of your environment, and just open up your eyes to everything. I think sometimes we can be quite scared and we don't really want to see things for what they are, but we just need to wake up. So wake up. That's what I would say.
That's really good. I think for me, I would say that if anybody comes across this conversation, I would just say lean into transition more. I think if we can really get to that place of like seeing transition as opportunity, like run to it, lean into that tension. It's gonna get it's snotty, it's like kind of messy, it's kind of ugly, especially when it feels like you're kind of floundering in the dark because you're in a new space. No one else has been where you are because you are yourself and your journey is unique. So I can't imagine it ever looks the same way twice. People might experience the feeling and principle of that space, but it doesn't look the same way twice.
No.
And I think if we can get just more and more comfortable and encouraged by like, oh, this feels like transition, as ugly and as uncomfortable, this is great because good stuff comes out. I'm discovering more and more about how I think, what things I could really do with shifting, and you build strength in that time. So much strength.
There is a book by one of my favorite Christian women, Sarah Roberts. I've
never met anybody more of a fan of Sarah Jakes Roberts than Evelkah Powell.
She is recently releasing a book.
I can imagine what I'm getting you for Christmas then. Okay, lovely.
Called Power Moves. And now when we think of transition, I've just made the connection in my head. It is essentially a power move because you're gaining power through the things that you're going through. You think that you're losing power. And I think for a lot of people, the mindset of if change feel uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable because you think you don't have control over it.
That's it. That's so true.
But in fact, what's happening is you are gaining power through the movements, the change, the transitions, and
you're enlarging your tent of the spaces that you've never been in before. We never look at it through that lens when we're going through it, though, do we? Which is hard.
It's easier said than done, 100%. But if we open our minds up to think about it, this is a power move. We might be a little bit more encouraged. We might be a little bit more bold to face it head on, and go through it with open arms. So if anything, remember your change is a power move.
I mean, that's like, you're just dropping these big bombs at the end of these episodes. Like, you're on fire today. Continue to subscribe, like, share this conversation in any way that you can. We'd love to hear your comments on kind of what's been shared today. And continue to follow Connecting Conversation.
Thank you all. Bye.